The Fifth Element was released in 1997 and was something that French director Luc Besson had begun developing when he was just 16, and it was released when he was 38. This was a big budget sci fi action adventure film at the time and a visual effects bonanza. Despite looking like a big budget Hollywood film cast with well known Hollywood actors and appealing to a general international cinema going audience, this is actually not a Hollywood production. It was the biggest budget French film of all time. And I think that's partially the reason the film is unique and contains a kind of charming quirkiness. The Fifth Element is a film I always liked. It's not perfect, few films are. Some of this film is very cheesy and campy, and there's perhaps too much cliched slapstick humor, but it's just generally a good time, with a simple but positive message about the importance of protecting and celebrating life and love. In 1914, an archaeological expedition to an ancient Egyptian temple is interrupted by the arrival of aliens known as Mondachewans. They kill the exhibition team and liaise with their Earth contact, a priest who is entrusted with protecting a powerful weapon designed to defeat a great evil. This weapon is comprised of 4 stones, each representing the elements fire, water, wind, and earth. And at the center is a human in a sarcophagus that can combine the power of these 4 elements and merge them into a divine light that can destroy this evil. The Mondachewans believe this weapon isn't safe on Earth, but they promise to return it when the time comes in 300 years. So we flash forward 300 years to deep space, where a mysterious giant fireball of unknown origin is being investigated by an Earth ship. The president of the Federated Territories is advised by Father Vito Cornelius, presumably of the same order entrusted with the stones. He explains that this entity is pure evil. The president wants to fire at it, but Cornelius warns him that evil begets evil and that attacking it will only make it stronger. General Statert on the Earth ship launches an attack, but the president tells him to stand down. As the missiles hit the fireball, it increases in size by 200%. The general is compelled by the entity to continue to fire on it, thus increasing its power further. This strange black blood begins to roll down his forehead. This is a sign that the entity is compelling a person to do something. Eventually, the Earth ship is consumed by the fireball and destroyed. Corbin Dallas, played by Bruce Willis, is a former Special Forces major, now a down-on-his-luck taxicab driver, close to losing his driver's license, and he awakens and begins going about his day in a vast, futuristic New York metropolis of flying cars, massive amounts of garbage and pollution everywhere, heavy population surveillance, and police who wear body armor and helmets that look like something out of Judge Dredd. Oh, and regular muggings by armed criminals who come straight to your apartment door. The world of The Fifth Element is very memorable, brought to life by excellent production design and visual effects that still hold up today, for the most part. The model work and CGI was excellent for the time, and having rewatched this film recently, I was pleasantly surprised to see that it hasn't dated too much. The future presented in The Fifth Element is highly stylized, textured, and extremely well thought out in terms of technology, fashion, architecture, and the general lifestyle of Earth's future inhabitants. In many ways, this world has become somewhat dystopian, and yet people still find the means of living fairly ordinary, mundane lives. The filmmakers very quickly establish a believable and complex world that's such a striking visual and thematic departure to almost anything you've seen before, and one that can only be comparable to iconic sci-fi classics like Dune or Blade Runner. And yet, The Fifth Element is most definitely its own unique thing. It doesn't feel borrowed or copied from anything, it feels genuinely original. I really love the film Tron Legacy because of its incredible ability to marry extraordinary visuals with a superb alternative and atmospheric soundtrack, and The Fifth Element achieves the same feat. Eric Serra's soundtrack is one of the best film scores I've ever heard. It's eclectic with a fusion of orchestral elements alongside exotic and contemporary house beats. He's helped to bring the visuals of the film to life by complementing them with what I can only describe as soundscapes. By that I mean highly atmospheric music that helps to tell the story of this magnificent, sometimes dark, sometimes opulent, but always multi-layered world. The now famous diva dance begins with a beautiful operatic performance that transforms into a fast-tempo techno dance tune, but there's so many wonderfully memorable arrangements, as well as beautifully poignant themes scattered throughout this film's score. A Mondachihwan ship carrying the Supreme Being is destroyed by Mangalores, a rather intellectually challenged bunch of mercenary aliens, and they're working for industrialist and central villain Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg, played to eccentric and theatrical perfection by the always brilliant Gary Oldman. Scientists recreate the fifth element Supreme Being via some leftover DNA retrieved from the crash. This reveals the character of Lilu, played by Mila Jovovich. She quickly escapes, demonstrating extraordinary superhuman strength, and the police move to intercept her. This is perhaps the most iconic scene from the film, the big city sky chase, and her rescue by Corbin Dallas. Willis and Jovovich work very well together, I think. There's genuine on-screen chemistry here. What's interesting watching this again is that we have this female character who's super strong, incredibly intelligent, and considered to be perfect and the key to saving humanity, and yet there's no feminist identity politics of note here. Bruce Willis is still the central role, a self-reliant, strong, decisive, masculine, tough guy, a man's man and an action star. This was also a time where everybody appreciated the old-fashioned archetype of the masculine hero. Nowadays, a character like Lilu would be portrayed as a Mary Sue. You know, completely self-sufficient, independent, she doesn't need no man kind of thing, and she'd constantly be upstaging men everywhere she went. But this film was made in the 90s, and instead we have a feminine hero who also has something that many so-called strong female characters lack these days: vulnerability. It's important to say that vulnerability is not helplessness. And this is the important point, because these days, vulnerability is equated to be helplessness. Lilu cannot save the world and destroy the evil entity by just having all four stones. She also needs something: the love and support of a man that she loves. Without Corbin Dallas proclaiming his love for Lilu at the end of the film, she would never have been capable of achieving her full potential and using her power to protect life. After all, life cannot be possible without the union of man and woman to begin with. While femininity no longer seems to be valued these days in modern woke Hollywood, this film understands that the masculine and feminine are unique and complementary energies. Before Lilu can save the world, she must first be saved by a man.
I can't.
And that would probably be the biggest issue that feminists would have with this film nowadays. Both Corbin and Lilu are heroes, but in different ways, and they're made heroic by each other. Lilu inspires Corbin to rediscover something within him that he's lost. In a future world of shallow consumerism and nihilism, Lilu helps him to find a transcendent meaning in his life: love. Lilu sees a world of destruction and violence, and she's lost hope in humanity. Corbin must reassure her that in spite of every bad thing that human beings have done, there are still beautiful things in this world worth saving. And that is Corbin's love for Lilu. Modern Hollywood doesn't seem to understand that feminine characteristics of vulnerability and beauty are strengths within themselves. These qualities within women have motivated men throughout history to fight wars, to compete against other men, and to fight to protect their tribe and family. Lilu's true power is not in her super physical strength or superior intellect. It's her ability to win Corbin's heart.
Some very good words indeed. Valiant, vulnerable, very beautiful.
So to briefly summarize the rest of the film, The race is on to get the stones and to employ Lilu as the central component in a weapon that can defeat the giant evil planet on its way to destroy Earth. Through a massive coincidence, Corbin, who's recruited for an undercover mission to the resort Floston Paradise to find and retrieve the stones from Diva Lacta Laguna, he's already found Lilu because she fell out of the sky and landed in his taxi. I mean, what are the odds? That was lucky, wasn't it? Lilu goes with him as his wife, and he's to be given the full VIP treatment while on board. Cornelius hitches a ride as a stowaway on the transport to Floston, while Mangalores, capable of taking human form, also try to tag along. Chris Tucker plays a character that can, I think, divide some people. He plays flamboyant radio host Ruby Rod, and there's only so much of this character I can stand. He's a little too over the top and completely unnecessary in the film, but he does provide some campy comic relief at times, although a lot of the humour I think falls flat. I will say that his sex scene with the air hostess is completely unnecessary and out of kilter with the tone of the rest of the film, in my opinion. It's really in poor taste and adds absolutely nothing, and just sullies the film with a bit of degeneracy. The diva dance scene is one of the highlights of the film, especially as it's juxtaposed with Lilu fighting the buffoonish Mangalores. Although the fighting is a bit silly, maybe a bit cartoony, but the editing and fantastic music and vocals makes it a really great set piece in the film. Bruce Willis finally does what Bruce Willis does best, and that's to do his die-hard thing by shooting bad guys and dodging explosions. He fights some Mangalores while Zorg attempts to retrieve the stones and sets an explosive on the ship to force the passengers to leave. The diva is killed, but luckily the stones are inside her, literally. I guess she must have ate them or something. That was weird. Zorg stops his own self-destruct device, but the Mangalores detonate one of their own, and he's killed in the following explosion, while our heroes manage to escape. Zorg isn't a particularly well-developed villain, though considering he's being compelled to retrieve the stones by the evil entity, his motivations probably don't need to be. He's a cartoonish villain, but Gary Oldman's fantastic performance and comic timing makes him genuinely likable and memorable. Corbin, Lilu, Cornelius, David, and Ruby head back to Earth with the stones, where they gradually figure out their specific means of activation. Unfortunately, Lilu has learned about the dark side of human history and has become hopeless and despondent. She wonders what's the point of saving life, considering what humanity does with it. Corbin Dallas explains to her about love being something worth saving. Lilu says she doesn't know love, because she was built to protect, not to love. It could be argued that as Corbin tells her that he needs her, that he in fact helps her to discover a new facet of her ever-emerging humanity. They kiss. Lilu combines the power of the four elements and produces the divine light, which neutralizes the giant evil fireball. So now I guess Earth has two moons. That's handy to have. The fifth element is not an especially deep or profound film, but it is just a really good time and makes for some genuinely nice escapism. With a fantastic soundtrack, some good humour, great visual effects, and decent action scenes, it's a sci-fi film that's well worth a watch if you've never seen it, and perhaps worth a rewatch if you haven't seen it in a while.